So if Marshall McLuhan was right, and he probably was, and advertising really is the greatest art form of this modern age, well, that makes Seth Godin the Damien Hirst of marketing. You know Damien Hirst, the artist who famously preserved a tiger shark in formaldehyde? Well, Seth's a bit like that, an ultimate entrepreneur who specializes in ideas.
These idea viruses spread through a population just like the flu.
Ideas that have transformed him into one of America's go-to business gurus. He's a pioneer of internet marketing, the founder of Squidoo.com, which is a wickedly successful site that allows anyone, yes, even you, to build a page about any topic you're passionate about. He's a writer as well, has 13 books, many of them are bestsellers. The latest two, Poke the Box and We Are All Weird. And now with pretty much the whole year in front of us, Seth's got some pretty brave predictions about what lies ahead. First things first. Things don't look good for advertising executives, those real-life mad men and mad women. And when it comes to your job, the idea of keeping your head down and doing what you're told, over. He says we're all going to have to change, or never mind the race at the top. You'll be racing to the bottom. Please welcome Seth Godin. Nice to see you, man. Good to see you. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
What a pleasure. You're such a pro.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to have you. I love the books, too. They're short. There's lots of them.
Exactly.
So you can always
They're like peanuts.
They're like peanuts. That's exactly right. So here we are, 2012. Are you hopeful?
What a new year that was.
Fantastic.
Boy, wow.
How was your New Year's Eve party, everybody? You're lying. No, seriously, 2012. What do you
Here's the thing. The recession is a forever recession. There's a cyclical recession that comes and goes, but there's this other thing, and it's the end of the industrial age. It lasted for 80 years. For 80 years, you got a job, you did what you were told, you retired. And good people could make above average pay for average work. And it ended. And so 2012 is not going to be more of the same. It's going to be worse of the same in that the industrial age is going away and a new thing is going to take its place.
It doesn't strike me as we're a group of people who are prepared for this new thing yet.
Totally unprepared. Absolutely. Because our schools, our systems, our retirement things, our taxes are all built around this notion of doing what you're told. And now we don't know what to do because it's a revolution.
And so what do you think we should do?
Pick yourself. Don't wait for someone to pick you. If you have a book, you don't need a publisher to pick you. You can publish it yourself. If you want to write, write. If you want to sing, sing. If you want to start a movement, start a movement. But this shift is that it doesn't matter whether you own a building or own a big company. You can now make an impact if you want to.
Well, there was this idea that people think the government owes them a job, or at least owes them the opportunity to get a job. Has that changed?
Well, I think the thinking hasn't changed at all, because that's what we grew up to believe, that this notion of you pay your taxes and you do what you're told and there's a pension and a safety net is hardwired in. Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, all those guys built it into the system. And now it's starting to crumble, and the jobs are moving. There's a McDonald's in California. You pull into the drive-thru and you say your order, and you can see the guy 12 feet away who's flipping burgers. You're not talking to him. Yeah. It goes over TCP/IP through the internet and a satellite to someone in South Dakota who's making 12 cents less an hour, who types in what you said and back over, because they could save 12 cents doing that. So there's this race to the bottom. And if you're going to say, I'm an average guy doing average work, we'll find someone cheaper than you.
But is it that there was a revolution, or is it that corporations felt like they had an unfettered path?
Yeah, capitalism has always needed boundaries. And so if you've got people racing, and if the boundaries get loosened, they're going to race faster. The alternative, though, which I'm much more interested in, is the race to the top. So while there's people who are racing to the bottom, there's...
What's the race to the bottom? What is that?
Yeah, the race to the bottom is, how do we get cheaper? How does everything get cheaper? More Walmarts, more Targets, more stuff made by people who are getting paid ever less from cheaper materials, cheaper services, whatever. The problem with the race to the bottom is you might win, which really sucks,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
The alternative is to race to the top. And some people are getting to race to the top because the internet and this revolutionary connection engine that we're all living with says if you can figure out how to do something interesting or unique or noteworthy, people will find you and pay you extra. Because you're not like everyone else, but cheaper. You're different than everyone and more expensive.
Yeah, but the whole system needs to change.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you really...
Like it or not, it's all turning upside down.
Is this one of the things like the record business where, regardless of how we feel, it's going to change? Do you think it will change?
Yeah. So the record business was perfect, George, in 1972. Everything about it was perfect. Rolling Stone magazine, American Top 40,
right
Billboard.
Right to the late mid-'90s,
yeah, then
right? Yeah.
Gone, all at once. More music now, by more musicians, listened to more often by more people, All of that's great, but the industry that made it, gone. And so the same thing is going to happen to Canadian Tire, and the same thing is going to happen to Tim Hortons, and the same thing is going to happen to the local hotel and everybody else. They're either going to have to choose that we're just like everyone else but a little cheaper, or they're going to have to say we're the only one. Like Rita's Candy Shop, halfway between here and Algonquin Park. Yeah. Rita's has a line out the door all summer long. She and her husband make hundreds of thousands of dollars, even though there's all these other places on Highway 11 that are struggling, because they're all the same. But there's only one Rita's.
It's like Weber's if you're going north as well.
Right next door to Weber's.
That's right.
Exactly.
Algonquin Park's big in your life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when did you first go there?
1970, when I was 10 years old.
There's a whole run of American guys who went up to Camp Erewhon, right? Yeah. So when you first got there, what did you think of Algonquin Park?
Well, you know, when you're 10 years old, all you want to do is go home because you're homesick. But then you look around and there's beaver and moose and trees, and that wears off when you're 10 years old after a couple hours.
But the first time you see a moose, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, this is like unbelievable. It was like the second day, there was a bear in my cabin. But what really transformed me was there are these 16-foot-long handmade cedar strip canoes. And at one point in the 50s, still in the 50s, it was the #1 vehicle in all of Canada was the canoe. And a 16-foot-long canoe is really big. And if you're 10 years old, you've never piloted something that big yourself. Maybe a bike, but that's it. Yeah. And this guy, Chuck LeBeau, got me in the boat, and I learned how to do it by myself. And that's what changed my life. This notion that I, even at the age of 10, could decide where to head and could be on my own.
What about, I love the idea of everybody doing what they want, but the reality is there are a lot of jobs that just need to get done. Jobs that don't go away.
Someone needs to do them, but it doesn't have to be you, does it, George?
Well, who doesn't?
Well, I'll worry about those people second. Right now, I'm worried about where are all the people stepping up, raising their hand, saying, I want to sing for you, I want to write for you, I want to connect for you, I want to lead this group. Right? You look at the thing that's been going on all last year with the Occupy movement. One of the interesting things about it is 24-year-olds, for no money, stood up and said, follow me. Yeah. Not all of them, just a few. Well, we can replicate that by organizing people, First Peoples, or organizing people who are really into listening to vinyl records, or whatever it is you care about.
What do you think, you know, the idea of going out and doing stuff, though, and making yourself happy, doing what you want, people are just conditioned to be afraid of things, and I think our parents' generation really beat that into us. Yeah. You need stability. Like, people are just afraid of failing, isn't that it?
Well, understand 20,000 guys, mostly men, at Ford Motor Company lost their job on one day. Yeah. All of them had done everything they were told, and they all lost their job. So don't tell me stability is stable, because it's not. There's part of our brain right back here, the amygdala, it's the prehistoric brain, the lizard brain. It's in charge of revenge and anger and reproduction. It's the one that makes you change your outfit before a blind date and eat a whole chocolate cake when you're depressed.
Isn't it funny that reproduction and anger and revenge are together?
Exactly, all in one little wild animal kind of thing. So you need to recognize the voice of that lizard. When it speaks up, when it freaks out because there's turbulence on the plane or because you're worried your boss's caller ID's on the phone, you need to say to the voice, thanks for letting me know, now let's move on, as opposed to having this fight with it, because that's what freezes us up.
It's got a couple of books, We're All Weird and Poke the Box. Seth Godin, everybody. We'll be right back.
To me, marketing's about values. This is a very complicated world. It's a very noisy world. And we're not going to get a chance to get people to remember much about us. No company is. And so we have to be really clear on what we want them to know about us. Now, Apple, fortunately, is one of the half a dozen best brands in the whole world. Right up there with Nike, Disney, Coke, Sony. It is one of the greats of the greats, not just in this country, but all around the globe. And, but even a great brand needs investment and caring if it's going to retain its relevance and vitality. And the Apple brand has clearly suffered from neglect in this area in the last few years. And we need to bring it back. The way to do that is not to talk about speeds and feeds. It's not to talk about MIPS and megahertz. It's not to talk about why we're better than Windows. The dairy industry tried for 20 years to convince you that milk was good for you. It's a lie, but they tried anyway. And the sales were going like this. And then they tried Got Milk, and the sales are going like this. Got Milk doesn't even talk about the product. Matter of fact, it focuses on the absence of the product. But But the best example of all, and one of the greatest jobs of marketing the universe has ever seen is Nike. Remember, Nike sells a commodity. They sell shoes. And yet, when you think of Nike, you feel something different than a shoe company. In their ads, as you know, they don't ever talk about the products. They don't ever tell you about their air soles and why they're better than Reebok's air soles. What does Nike do in their advertising? They honor great athletes and they honor great athletics. That's who they are. That's what they are about. Apple spends a fortune on advertising. You'd never know it. You'd never know it. So when I got here, Apple just fired their agency. They were doing a competition with 23 agencies that, 4 years from now would have picked one. And we blew that up, and we hired Chiat, the ad agency that I was fortunate enough to work with years ago. We created some award-winning work, including the commercial voted the best ad ever made in 1984 by advertising professionals. And we started working about 8 weeks ago. And the question we asked was, our customers want to know who is Apple and what is it that we stand for? Where do we fit in this world? And what we're about isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe. And we've had the opportunity to work with people like that. We've had an opportunity to work with people like you, with software developers, with customers who have done it in some big and some small ways. And we believe that in this world, people can change it for the better. And that those people that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do. And so what we're going to do in our first brand marketing campaign in several years is to get back to that core value. A lot of things have changed. The market's a totally different place than it was a decade ago. And Apple's totally different, and Apple's place in it is totally different. And believe me, the products and the distribution strategy and the manufacturing are totally different, and we understand that. But values and core values, those things shouldn't change. The things that Apple believed in at its core are the same things that Apple really stands for today. And so we wanted to find a way to communicate this. And what we have is something that I'm very moved by. It honors those people who have changed the world. Some of them are living, some of them are not. But the ones that aren't, as you'll see, you know that if they'd ever used a computer, it would have been a Mac. And the theme of the campaign is think different. It's the people, honoring the people who think different and who move this world forward. And it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this company. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it, and I hope that you feel the same way about it I do.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Well, in the last few months, I had 2 books come out. One is called Poke the Box. Poke the Box is about the notion that in a world that's changing fast, the biggest rewards go to people who are taking initiative as opposed to waiting for something to happen to them. And my latest book, which is a limited edition, is called We Are All Weird. And the argument of We Are All Weird is that there's this normal distribution, this curve that shows the mass market in the middle, and it's leaking, right? That the masses are finding things they like better than average. And as it moves to the edges, it's people who market to the edges and embrace the edges that are embraced by the audience. Well, most people think marketing is a task. Neither a science nor an art. It's a task where someone gives you an average product for average people, and your job is to hype it and spin it and promote it and advertise it so that the masses will buy it. And I'm not buying that. I think that marketing is the art of making something that people want to talk about, of producing something that people want to engage in. So marketers have to move upstream now. We have to stop being the last step in the process and start being the first step. What's next doesn't matter. It's what's now. What's right now is, for the first time ever, you can reach the world. Right now, we're in the connection economy, this notion that we are connecting people to one another. If you wait for the next thing, you're going to be waiting a really long time. This is the next thing. You know, it doesn't count until you ship it. It's not art until it meets the market. It's just meetings, and meetings are a waste of time. You've got to figure out how to engage. You've got to figure out how to be in the world if you want to find out what's going to work. Well, I think it's 3 things. Don't go to meetings. Don't have a television. Right there, that's 12 hours a day that I get that most people don't. And figure out what you're not going to do. I don't tweet. I don't use Facebook. People think I'm an idiot first to say I'm not going to do that. But if I can't do it well, if I'm not willing to engage in it in a way I'm proud of, I'd rather not do it at all. You know, I think a big part of it is showing up every day for, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 10 years. The first 3 years are the hardest. And too often, people put a lot of heart into their work, but they don't stick it out. They don't get through the dip. And I think that's a shame. You know, the early stuff I did 25 years ago isn't as good as what I was doing now. So I'm really glad I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't think you get to be a thought leader unless you're willing to be a thought punching bag, unless you're willing to have people criticize what you say. If what you're saying is safe and what you're saying is obvious, then you're not a thought leader. You're just speaking up. I think that we usually get advice not to do stuff, and too often we don't listen to the advice where someone says, go make a ruckus. And every time I go and I make a ruckus, I'm pretty glad I did. Quit watching and go make something. biggest failures as a marketer in the last few years, a record label I started that had a CD called Sauce. But before I can do that, I got to tell you about sliced bread and a guy named Otto Rohwedder. Now, before sliced bread was invented in the 1910s, I wonder what they said, like the greatest invention since the telegraph or something. But this guy named Otto Rohwedder invented sliced bread. And he focused, like most inventors did, on the patent part and the making part. And the thing about the invention of sliced bread is this, that for the first 15 years after sliced bread was available, no one bought it, no one knew about it. It was a complete and total failure. And the reason is that until Wonder came along and figured out how to spread the idea of sliced bread, no one wanted it. That the success of sliced bread, like the success of almost everything we've been talking about at this conference, is not always about what the patent is like or what the factory is like. It's about, can you get your idea to spread or not? And I think that the way you're going to get what you want or cause the change that you want to change to happen is you're going to figure out a way to get your ideas to spread. And it doesn't matter to me whether you're running a coffee shop or you're an intellectual or you're in business or flying hot air balloons. I think that all this stuff applies to everybody regardless of what we do. That what we are living in is a century of idea diffusion. That people who can spread ideas, regardless of what those ideas are, win. And when I talk about it, I usually pick business because they make the best pictures that you can put in your presentation, and because it's the easiest sort of way to keep score. But I want you to forgive me when I use these examples because I'm talking about anything that you decide to spend your time to do. At the heart of spreading ideas is TV and stuff like TV. TV and mass media made it really easy to spread ideas in a certain way. I call it the TV industrial complex. And the way the TV industrial complex works is you buy some ads, interrupt some people, that gets you distribution. You use the distribution you get to sell more products. You take the profit from that to buy more ads. And it goes around and around and around the same way the military industrial complex worked a long time ago. That model of, and we heard it yesterday, if we could only get on the homepage of Google, if we could only figure out how to get promoted there, if we could only figure out how to grab that person by the throat and tell them about what we want to do, if we could do that, then everyone would pay attention, we would win. Well, this TV industrial complex informed my entire childhood and probably yours. I mean, all of these products succeeded because someone figured out how to touch people in a way that they weren't expecting, in a way they didn't necessarily want, with an ad over and over and over again until they bought it. On the road, and you see a cow, and you keep driving. Because you've seen cows before. Cows are invisible. Cows are boring. Who's going to stop and pull over and say, oh, look, a cow? Nobody. But if the cow was purple, isn't that a great special effect? I could do that again if you wanted. If the cow was purple, you'd notice it for a while. I mean, if all cows are purple, then you get bored with those too. The thing that's going to decide what gets talked about, what gets done, what gets changed, what gets purchased, what gets built is it remarkable? And remarkable is a really cool word because we think it just means neat. But it also means worth making a remark about. And that is the essence of where idea diffusion is going. That two of the hottest cars in the United States is a $55,000 giant car, big enough to hold a Mini in its trunk. People are paying full price for both, and the only thing they have in common is that they don't have anything in common. Every week, the #1 best-selling DVD in America changes. It's never The Godfather, it's never Citizen Kane, it's always some third-rate movie with some second-rate star. But the reason it's #1 is because that's the week it came out. Because it's new, because it's fresh, because people saw it and said, I didn't know that was there, and they noticed it. Two of the big success stories the last 20 years in retail. One sells things that are super expensive in a blue box, and one sells things that are as cheap as they can make them. The only thing they have in common is that they're different. We're now in the fashion business. No matter what we do for a living, we're in the fashion business. And the thing is, people in the fashion business know what it's like to be in the fashion business. They're used to it. The rest of us have to figure out how to think that way, how to understand that it's not about interrupting people with big full-page ads. or insisting on meetings with people. But it's a totally different sort of process that determines which ideas spread and which ones don't. This chair, they sold $1 billion worth of Aeron chairs by reinventing what it meant to sell a chair. They turned a chair from something the purchasing department bought to something that was a status symbol about where you sat at work. This guy, Lionel Poulain, the most famous baker in the world, he died 2.5 months ago, and he was a hero of mine and a dear friend. He lived in Paris. Last year he sold $10 million worth of French bread, every loaf baked in a bakery he owned by one baker at a time in a wood-fired oven. And when Lionel started his bakery, the French poo-pooed it. They didn't want to buy his bread. It didn't look like French bread. It wasn't what they expected. It was neat. It was remarkable. And slowly, it spread from one person to another person until finally, it became the official bread of 3-star restaurants in Paris. Now he's in London, and he ships by FedEx all around the world. What marketers used to do is make average products for average people. That's what mass marketing is. Smooth out the edges. Go for the center. That's the big market. They would ignore the geeks and, God forbid, the laggards. It was all about going for the center. But in a world where the TV industrial complex is broken, I don't think that's the strategy we want to use anymore. I think the strategy we want to use is to not market to these people, because they're really good at ignoring you, but market to these people because they care. These are the people who are obsessed with something. And when you talk to them, they'll listen because they like listening. It's about them. And if you're lucky, they'll tell their friends on the rest of the curve, and it'll spread. It'll spread through the entire curve. They have something I call otaku. It's a great Japanese word. It describes the desire of someone who's obsessed to, say, drive across Tokyo to try a new ramen noodle place, because that's what they do. They get obsessed with it. To make a product, to market an idea, to come up with any problem you want to solve that doesn't have a constituency within otaku is almost impossible. Instead, you have to find a group that really desperately cares about what it is you have to say, talk to them, and make it easy for them to tell your friends. There's a hot sauce otaku, but there's no mustard otaku. That's why there's lots and lots and lots of kinds of hot sauces and not so many kinds of mustard. Not because it's hard to make interesting mustard. You can make interesting mustard. But people don't because no one's obsessed with it, and thus no one tells their friends. Krispy Kreme has figured this whole thing out. Krispy Kreme has a strategy. And what they do is they enter a city, they talk to the people with the otaku, and then they spread through the city to the people who have just crossed the street. This yo-yo right here costs $112, but it sleeps for 12 minutes. Not everybody wants it, but they don't care. They want to talk to the people who do, and maybe it'll spread. These guys make the loudest car stereo in the world. It's as loud as a 747 jet. You can't get in. The car's got bulletproof glass on the windows because they'll blow out the windshield otherwise. But the fact remains that when someone wants to put a couple speakers in their car, if they've got the otaku or they've heard from someone who does, they go ahead and they pick this. It's really simple. You sell to people who are listening, and maybe, just maybe, those people tell their friends. So when Steve Jobs talks to 50,000 people at his keynote, right, who are all tuned in from 130 countries watching his 2-hour commercial, that's the only thing keeping his company in business, is that those 50,000 people care desperately enough to watch a 2-hour commercial and then tell their friends. Pearl Jam, 96 albums released in the last 2 years. Everyone made a profit. How? They only sell them on their website. Those people who buy them on their website have the otaku, and then they tell their friends, and it spreads, and it spreads. This hospital crib costs $10,000, 10 times the standard. But hospitals are buying it faster than any other model. Hard candy nail polish doesn't appeal to everybody, but to the people who love it, they talk about it like crazy. This paint can right here saved the Dutch Boy Paint Company, making them a fortune. Cost 35% more than regular paint because Dutch Boy made a can that people talk about because it's remarkable. They didn't just slap a new ad on the product. They changed what it meant to build a paint product. AmIHotOrNot.com. Every day, 250,000 people go to this site, run by 2 volunteers, and I can tell you they're hard graders. And they didn't get this way by advertising a lot. They got this way by being remarkable, sometimes a little too remarkable. And this picture frame has a cord going out the back, and you plug it into the wall. My father has this on his desk, and he sees his grandchildren every day, changing constantly. And every single person who walks into his office hears the whole story of how this thing ended up on his desk. And one person at a time, the idea spreads. These are not diamonds. Not really. They're made from cremains. After you get cremated, you can have yourself made into a gem. Oh, you like my ring? It's my grandmother. Fastest growing business in the whole mortuary industry. But you don't have to be Ozzy Osbourne. You don't have to be super outrageous to do this. What you have to do is figure out what people really want and give it to them. A couple quick rules to wrap up. The first one is design is free when you get to scale. And the people who come up with stuff that's remarkable more often than not figure out how to put design to work for them. Number two, the riskiest thing you can do now is be safe. Procter & Gamble knows this. Right? The whole model of being Procter & Gamble is always about average products for average people. That's risky. The safe thing to do now is to be at the fringes, be remarkable. And being very good is one of the worst things you can possibly do. Very good is boring. Very good is average. It doesn't matter whether you're making a record album or you're an architect or you have a tract on sociology. If it's very good, it's not going to work because no one's going to notice it. So, my 3 stories. Silk put a product that does not need to be in the refrigerated section next to the milk in the refrigerated section. Sales tripled. Why? Milk, 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 not milk. Right? For the people who were there and looking at that section, it was remarkable. They didn't triple their sales with advertising. They tripled it by doing something remarkable. That is a remarkable piece of art. You don't have to like it, but a 40-foot tall dog made out of bushes in the middle of New York City is remarkable. Frank Gehry didn't just change a museum, he changed an entire city's economy by designing one building that people from all over the world went to see. Now, at countless meetings, at the Portland City Council or who knows where, they say, we need an architect. Can we get Frank Gehry? Right? Because he did something that was at the fringes. And my big failure, I came out with an a record album, and hopefully a whole bunch of record albums in SACD format, this remarkable new format, and I marketed it straight to people with $20,000 stereos. People with $20,000 stereos don't like new music. So what you need to do is figure out who does care. Who is going to raise their hand and say, I want to hear what you're doing next, and sell something to them. The last example I want to give you, this is a map of Soap Lake, Washington. As you can see, if that's nowhere, it's in the middle of it. But they do have a lake. And people used to come from miles around to swim in the lake. They don't anymore. So the founding fathers at Soap Lake said, we got some money to spend. What could we build here? And like most committees, they were going to build something pretty safe. And then an artist came to them. This is a true artist rendering. He wants to build a 55-foot tall lava lamp in the center of town. That's a purple cow. That's something worth noticing. I don't know about you, but if they build it, that's where I'm going to go. Thank you very much for your attention.
I must say I owe much of my financial success to a man I call my rich dad, who was my childhood best friend's father. He made me realize that there's a very big difference between what the rich teach their kids about money, that the poor don't teach their kids about money. My real dad, or my biological father, was the head of education for the state of Hawaii. I call him my poor dad simply because he was a high-paid government official. He made a lot of money, yet at the end of every month he was broke. My rich dad, on the other hand, was my best friend's father, and he ultimately became one of the wealthiest men in the state of Hawaii. And by the way, my rich dad was a high school dropout. One dad had a habit of saying, I can't afford it. My rich dad, on the other hand, forbade his son and I from ever saying I can't afford it. My poor dad always said our house is an asset and it's our largest investment. My rich dad said your house is not an asset, it's a liability, and if it's your largest investment, you're in financial trouble. My poor dad believed in job security. He said look for a company that had excellent pay, good benefits such as medical, vacation, and other types of perks. My rich dad said that entitlement mentality kept people financially weak and financially needy. My poor dad always said, find a safe, secure job and work your way up the corporate ladder. My rich dad said, why not just own the ladder? I decided to listen and learn from my rich dad, and the rest is history.
Well, let's go through some more of Robert's points about what he says. The rich teach their children that the poor and middle class do not. Main difference, you say, between the rich and poor lies in what we teach our children about
That's
money.
correct.
Really?
Very much so.
And it's a mentality. It's a total way of thinking, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's really easy to change if you're willing to change the way you think. For instance, my poor dad was a very good man. For Japanese, he was 6'4", very smart, academic genius. But he always said to me, you know, go to school, get good grades, get a job, and work hard. Save money. And my rich dad said, well, if you want to be rich, that's not the way you do it. And instead of working for money, my rich dad taught me how to have money work hard for me. And that's why I've only had a job 4 years of my entire life. Other than that, I'm building companies or I'm investing, and that's all I'm doing.
Well, the subject of money is taught at home, not in school, you say, because most of us learn about money from our parents, and it's only good if you have a rich dad mentality.
My message to people is, you know, why struggle for money when you don't have to? You know, it's that really simple if you have good advice. The problem is money is not taught in school. And so what we do is we oftentimes follow in our parents' footsteps. We may do different jobs, but we oftentimes follow in the same financial patterns. And my rich dad used to say, you know, he says, you can't end poverty by giving somebody money. Giving a poor person money keeps them poor longer.
Yeah.
And that's what breaks my heart, because I want to help people.
And you say one of the mistakes that middle class and poor people do is they try to look rich.
Yes.
So those are the first people to go buy the furs, the diamonds, the big TVs, and all the stuff, correct?
Right. My rich dad called it looking good and going nowhere.
Love that. Yeah. My grandmother used to call it not a pot to piss in, but anyway, that's about it. Kind of the same thing.
I'm glad you said that.
You heard that too. Okay, they'll edit that somewhere. But anyway, it's the same principle. You have all this stuff. I know when I see people out and they got all the stuff and all the things and but then when they go home, what?
They have bills.
They have bills.
And they worry and their health goes down and, you know, it's not worth it. The thing that I think most people don't realize is that there's only two kinds of money problems, basically. One's not enough money and one's too much money, and they're both problems. And you have to know how to handle too much money, as I'm sure you do right now. Otherwise, if you...
Watching it all the time. Had a bad week last week. Yeah.
But it's a different problem,
Yeah,
isn't
it's a different kind of problem, yeah.
So when you have no money, you have to have a plan to eventually have plenty of money. And then when you have plenty of money, you got to shift plans.
Yes.
And so that's why people who win the lottery all of a sudden get all this plenty of money, and they go broke again.
And overwhelmed by it.
Right, and they go because they've never understood how money worked.
Last year, Paul discovered Robert Kiyosaki's financial plan.
He stresses three main things. Number one, set up a home-based business. Number two, get control of your taxes. Number three, take that extra income and buy more assets with it.
He followed the steps and set up his own home-based business. It was easier than he thought and only cost him $300. With that extra income from his new home business and a pay raise from the firehouse of $300 a month, he started to buy homes that were in foreclosure.
You can purchase them under value, go in, carpet, paint them, fix them up, turn and sell them, and even make more money.
With the money he made from selling those houses, Paul bought stocks, mutual funds, IRAs, and even set up an educational account for his children.
It has changed my outlook on life because this has given me more time freedom with my kids and more financial freedom. And the best thing is my income's gone from about $48,000 to a little over $100,000 in a one-year period.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. I bet you're impressed with yourself.
You say that you can pay yourself first, pay your bills second, but if you do that, you still can't afford to buy a house. Say you bought a house. How am I going to get somebody to loan me the money to buy a house when I can't fully pay my bills as I'm paying them now? When I'm paying the minimum payment, let's say that.
He doesn't understand the principle of pay yourself first. He's with a lot of people out there who are saying, look, I got the bill collectors calling, I'm scared to answer the phone because I don't have the money. So how am I going to now give myself money first when I got these people knocking down my door? That's what all these people are shaking their heads to.
Right.
They're thinking easy for you to say from where you're sitting now.
Well, I sell. I'm a salesman. I go to work every day and I try to sell more and more and more to make more and more money, but that money's still going to my bills, so I'm not getting called by the credit collectors.
One thing that Paul said right there, he starts a home-based business. The tax laws are written against, tax laws are not equal. And if you want, what I'm saying is, got to get educated here. So the tax laws are not equal. So if you're an employee and you work harder and harder, the government's going to take 50% no matter what. So by being a business owner, which is Paul did, he has tax advantages that the middle class and poor do not have.
Taxes are the biggest expense in your life as a salesman. The more money you make, the more the government takes. So get control of your taxes first by setting up a home-based business. Take that tax savings now, pay down debt, and buy more assets in the real estate. And you said, well, I've got credit problems. I'm not going to be able to get a loan. Find a motivated seller. Find owner financing. There's all kinds of opportunities out there. Most of society, though, will watch this show and then they'll go back to just sitting at home at night. You really have to change what you're doing in your life. If you're not happy where you're at financially, you've got to do something drastically.
Just saving money and investing is not enough. There is a complete mindset that goes on. I think that's what these people who came...
Paul was saying, because we all have the mentality in this country, you work harder, it will pay off in the end. It does not, because the government always gets theirs.
Right. And then real estate is the least taxed income you can get. So when my wife and I were struggling, we saved $6,000. We bought that house. Thing went from $46,000 to $105,000. We had $50,000.
But I think when people think of real estate, they think about the house that they would want to live in. So you start out buying something that you wouldn't necessarily want, and you use that to build more income.
And that's what she did. She bought 7.
Build more income.
That's my idea. I want to buy a 3-flat, live in the basement, rent off the top two apartments,
Good,
and have them pay my mortgage for me. Good. But I still need to come up with the original capital to buy the place.
That starts with paying yourself first.
Hey, Oprah.
See, that's what people should be teaching in school, because I swear to you, we've all been taught, be responsible, pay your bills first so that the people don't, call you or not harassing you and so forth. What were you going to say, Paul?
I would say I was dealing with the real estate, what Robert's talking about, but for $300, I set up a home-based business. Anybody in this room can do that, and you're going to save money on your taxes, number one, while you're generating income on your business. Once you've got that income coming in, you can do all the real estate that you want then. So it's really just getting out there and looking at the different opportunities. $300 investment. Can't beat it.
As an entrepreneur, I have built many businesses from scratch. And as some of you know, a lot of them crashed also. Statistics show that most new businesses fail within the first 5 years, 90% in fact. And of the 10% that survive, the remaining 10% crash in the second 5 years. So in other words, most are gone in 10 years. So I've looked at many different models, and one that stands out for me is network marketing. And the reason for that, it takes very little upfront cash. It's low overhead. You can do it part-time. It means keep your daytime job, but do this part-time. And once the business is up and running, it can generate enough income so that you can move from the left side to the right side of the quadrant. So let me tell you about my introduction to network marketing, because I had a very closed mind to it. Since I can build my own businesses, I said, why do I need a network marketing business? But about 15 years ago, I have a good friend. His name is Bill, and this guy is the best real estate investor I know. He has tons of assets in here. So I said, Bill, why did you start a network marketing business? And it's simple. His answer was very simple. He says, it's my way of helping people. But more importantly, he says, the reason most people can't invest in real estate is because they don't have a business. They don't make enough money simply because taxes, debt, inflation, and retirement savings are killing them. They cannot even invest. So my friend Bill, who was a professional real estate entrepreneur, he says, I started a network marketing business so the people that worked with me could start their own business and then invest money with him. So with that, I realized then that network marketing wasn't about making money, but it was about helping people to help other people make money so they become financially free. So the beauty of network marketing, I said, like it's very low entry point, doesn't take much money, you can do it part-time. And where you profit is in most big corporations is they spend millions, sometimes billions of dollars in advertising. So rather than give that money to advertisers, network marketing depends on building a network. It's called word of mouth, like you recommend a movie to a best friend. So really, the reason I support network marketing, because it's not about selling. It's about people helping people build assets in the asset columns, becoming business owners, and then becoming investors, rather than going through all of this here, which most E's and S's go through.